If you could sit down with someone who is already retired and ask them just one question, what would you do differently if you were back in your 50s? Not what you wish had happened, okay? Not that. Not what the market had done, not what your employer had offered in terms of 401k versus pension or benefits, but what you would have changed. Because researchers have asked this exact question from the U.S. Health and Retirement Study to work published by the National Bureau of Economic Research to retirement transition research summarized by a variety of pension authorization groups. What retirees say across those studies is really surprisingly consistent. Their regrets, they're not dramatic. They're not about one big mistake that blew up everything. They're about assumptions. Assumptions that retirement would unfold gradually, that your health would cooperate, that work would just taper off, right? Just kind of ride off in the sunset, that time would remain available to adjust to some of the realities when you cross that retirement threshold. But retirement often doesn't arrive gently. And when it doesn't, preparation becomes impossible. Today, we're going to walk through what retirees consistently say they wish they had done differently in their 50s. And why the real lesson, it isn't just about money. If this is useful, would you take a moment to like and subscribe? It helps more people find some practical, real-world guidance. And we challenge some of the retirement assumptions that are out there. Most people imagine retirement as something that happens slowly. They picture reducing their hours, stepping back from responsibility. Gradually, I'm going to transition into something just a little bit lighter. In retirement transition surveys, summarized by the ASPPA, nearly half of workers over 50, this was their hope. Their expectation was this kind of gradual shift. But when retirees were asked, okay, well, how did it really go? How did it actually happen? Many described something very different. They didn't ease out. They just stopped. Sometimes because of layoffs, sometimes because of caregiving needs, sometimes because of health. The difference between expectation and reality is important because if your retirement plan assumes, hey, I'm in control, right? That you'll control the timing of your exit, that plan may be a lot more fragile than it appears. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research examined responses from older Americans using the U.S. Health and Retirement Study. One regret that showed up again and again, not saving more. But something interesting happened when people were shown realistic data about how long they might live, right? The dreaded longevity question. Their regrets shifted. They began to focus on income decisions. They wish they had delayed Social Security. They wish they had created more predictable income. They wish they had planned for the possibility of living into their 80s or even 90s, which tells us really something so important. People don't plan their retirement based on statistics, right? Cold, hard data. They plan based on gut instinct. And instinct, it does tend to underestimate longevity. So what financial advice would you give your younger self? The answers across these longitudinal studies were direct. Clear the debt, right? Get into retirement without any debt at all. Second, build emergency savings. Next, avoid relying on credit cards. Start saving earlier. The reason this matters so much in your 50s is that this is often the decade when income peaks. Children may be financially independent and able to leave the nest. And for the first time in years, there possibly a real financial surplus in your household budget. But many people use that decade, that surplus, to upgrade lifestyle instead of increasing stability. They improve their consumption instead of their resilience. And that trade-off, you don't see that. It often doesn't become visible until very much later. Health plays a larger role in retirement timing than most financial and retirement plans assume. Retirement plans often assume retirement will happen by choice. But data from that health and retirement study shows that many exits from the workforce are involuntary. Your energy changes, your mobility changes, caregiving responsibilities emerge, and all that reframes your retirement planning. Health is not separate from retirement. They don't exist in individual compartments. Health influences whether you have options. Maintaining physical and mental resilience, it extends your flexibility. Losing it often reduces choice. Many people believe that they will gradually scale back, but research comparing expectations to outcomes show that many transitions are abrupt. Again, those longitudinal studies suggest something important. People who intentionally reshape their work in their 50s often experience better quality of life as they approach retirement. They didn't necessarily stop working earlier, but they worked differently. They adjusted their roles. They reduced the intensity of their work. They looked for ways to increase flexibility. Waiting until retirement to redesign your work may mean waiting too long. When individuals in the NBER research were given objective longevity information, how long should somebody live? Their sense of regret dramatically increased, especially around income security decisions. Many people plan for retirement as though it will last 15 to 20 years. But many retirements now last 25, even 30 years. Planning for the average lifespan creates vulnerability. Planning for longevity creates stability. Retirement doesn't just change your schedule. It changes what you value. A large gerontology study that followed more than 5,000 people found that after retirement, people place greater importance on contribution, learning, helping others, often younger generations. But these priorities don't appear automatically. Work often provides structure and identity, right? Who I am is what I do at work, right? What that title looks like. When that disappears, there can be an identity gap that's really hard to deal with and may take years to come to grips with. People who begin cultivating purpose earlier through mentoring, volunteering, learning, or investing in relationships, they experience a smoother transition from the workforce into retirement. Why? Because they're not starting from zero. Across multiple studies, from the National Bureau of Economic Research to the Health and Retirement Study, to retirement studies and longitudinal research, a consistent pattern appears. Retirees don't just wish they had saved more. Sure, everybody wants to have saved more, but they wish they had been more intentional in their planning and saving, more intentional about how they spent that money back in their 50s, intentional about health and how they shepherded and encouraged health, intentional about their work, intentional about relationships, intentional about purpose outside and beyond employment. Because once retirement arrives, there is limited time to build those systems from scratch. And this conversation matters most for people between the ages of 45 and 60, because this is still a leverage decade. For many people, this period combines experience, income, and remaining time. Really critical. Financial decisions can still compound. Health decisions can still create and extend flexibility. Work design, you can reshape it. Relationships can still deepen. Waiting often shifts planning into reaction, right? Knee-jerk reaction. You're being faced with a challenge. Acting early keeps planning proactive. Retirement does not begin when work stops. It begins when intention starts. Many retirees wish they had begun earlier to stabilize finances, earlier to protect your health, earlier to reshape work, earlier to deepen those relationships, earlier to build purpose. Not because perfection was required, but because preparation requires time. And most people, looking back, wish they had used their 50s to begin.